There are points when the market just goes, wild. It doesn't know which way it's going. It becomes manic depressive. If America pulls out in the next couple of days, that's going to be absolute mayhem and chaos in the Middle East forever. And if they stick around, it's going to be mayhem and chaos. So I got out of absolutely everything, and I hate being out the market. That's where I live. I loved everything I sold. I just don't want to be in a situation of riding it into the pit of despair.
That sounds like panic, man. That sounds like you're getting ready to bug out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look, I do not underestimate Donald Trump, but I don't see how President Houdini gets out of this one. America making a mess and stomping off will certainly define America as a fallen angel. It's good to be prepared. It's good to have backup. It's good to have some food. The potential for a very, very, very bad crash is there. You can pull lots of rabbits out of the hat, but at some point you run out of rabbits, and this could be it.
World War III is already happening.
This is a house of cards, and it is in the process of collapsing right now.
You're going to see an economic crash, the likes of which we've never seen.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back once again with Clem Chambers, the CEO of Online Blockchain and a senior contributor at Forbes.com, as well as Seeking Alpha. He's launched a new FN, which is what would you call it, I
would call it a financial network, a financial data platform where people can look at prices in real time rather than get them delayed or whatever, or not get them at all sometimes. So people can sit there and follow the markets very, very closely. And that's something we've been building out for a few months now.
And you also have a YouTube channel, which is very infotaining, and you have a lot of great takes. And honestly, your track record has been pretty good as of late. And so we wanted to get you on today because you know a lot about finance and the markets. And a lot of people right now, as we were talking before this, March was just a crazy month. And, we want to get, your sense of what's coming in April with respect to the markets, what you're doing right now in terms of investing, where you might not advise people because we're not giving financial advice, but what you might be doing right now with whatever capital you have at your disposal. So, Clem, what is your bird's eye view of the macroeconomic picture right now? Let's just start with a little debrief. Like how are you doing, man? March was rough.
On Friday, I had enough. So I got out of absolutely everything, even the stuff that will do well if it went badly, and even the stuff that would do badly if it went well, whatever. I just got rid of all of it, sold it all, apart from one, Norwegian oil, got rid of everything.
So you bought dollars is what you're saying?
I bought dollars. No, I didn't buy dollars, actually. I bought pounds and euros because I didn't go into dollars. And, dollars would have been good, but this is a Friday. It's not really it's not like, 6 weeks ago. And I think your viewers will understand the feeling of, it might not be as bad as I think it is, but it's worth protecting myself at this point. There's a return on capital and there's return of capital. And then Friday was awful, and Monday was awful, and Tuesday was okay, and today has been amazing. And, there are points when the market just goes, wild. It doesn't know which way it's going. It becomes, manic depressive, and it goes up like a rocket and down like a rock. And then each day is a different week. And I just thought on Friday, when the US president said, I'm going to give them another 10 days, I thought this is just madness. And you don't really want to be in mad, just get out the way, let it settle down, and then reevaluate. And I hate being out the market. That it's just like, I just hate not being in the markets. That's where I live. So for me to leave and just go to to fiat, is just something I just hate because, it's not what I do. But every now and again, well, actually with President Trump, it's been blooming every year, because last year I got out before it crashed. And here, I think we're in a bear market. And I'm back out again. I just thought, oh no, please let me back in again. I want to be in good stocks good assets. And, I feel as if the best thing to do is to run away.
Is there any reason why you chose euros and pounds over dollars?
Well, yes, no, maybe. I mean, they're pretty much all the same. It's not a long-term position. So all the bad things that your viewers will think of as fiat, i.e., something that's going to go down consistently for the next 10 years, doesn't really apply. It's like getting out the way of an oncoming train. And really, you don't even care if you're in a bunch of poison ivy.
So
you're off the train.
You're renowned for your expression, Bitcoin is for flight and gold is for war. I know you got out of gold at 5,000, and we've been seeing weird correlations with gold and oil and the markets right now. There's a lot going on. There's stuff shuffling around. Where are you right now with the metals market in terms of platinum, silver, and gold?
Well, okay. I have been saying all along, gold is for war, Bitcoin is for flight. And actually, it made me a decent amount of money. Bitcoin is for flight because Bitcoin did some moves, and I went, right, they're gonna invade on this weekend. So on the Wednesday before, I piled up on oil, and Bob's your uncle. It all happened, just like Bitcoin told me. And on the Monday, I got out. Sadly, I made a good decent return. If I'd held it for another week, it would have been mightier more. But, that's trading's not about anything but being as more right than wrong. So the Bitcoin thing still works. And I think the gold stuff is actually really good news. Not necessarily for gold holders, but the war is not the war that you're looking for, as Obi-Wan Kenobi might say. The war that has been driving the gold price is the potential war between America and China. And I think that's been delayed, and probably well delayed now, because it was delayed because the Chinese have fallen out with their own army over Taiwan. And I guess the Taiwanese looked a little bit worrisome for the Chinese army, because they would have to go up those cliffs. 2 million Chinese soldiers would have to go against 500,000 defenders. And obviously it would be utter carnage. And they probably said, "Oh, can we prepare for another kind of 12 years for that?" And they all got fired. So the top generals got fired, but nonetheless, the army didn't kind of go along with the firing. It kind of said, "Oh yeah, well, your committee that controls the People's Liberation Army has got nobody on it now, apart from you. And that's difficult. We're not quite sure what we should do now." They just played possum. And that's why gold stopped. That's why gold came back, because market looks a year out, and it was getting pretty close to the deadline of the PLA and Taiwan, which is going to be next May. Well, that went back. And now, obviously, you're going to see they're going to be looking at not only Putin making a pig's ear of invading a small country, seeing America making a pig's ear of invading a small country. So if you are a president and you have any sanity in your body, you're going to look at those two examples and go, do I want to do that? Probably don't want to do that. That doesn't look, because Russia obviously is not a superpower. It's just a, rude bully. There's 150 million poor people in Russia. So you can put down their inability to conquer Ukraine to the fact that they're just a broken old rubbish country. But America isn't. And, it looks like it's completely fumbled this. And, the Iranians, apart from having a desert full of rockets and a load of crazy people, they haven't really got, much of a, well, they can't fight back. They aren't able to fight back. They're able to chuck random rockets at people. But nonetheless, it has kept America at bay. As of today, and who knows what tomorrow will bring, they're making a pretty good fist of it. Well, if I was the president of China, I'd look at that and go, well, third time lucky, maybe not. And that is a damper on gold, because gold is for war, and that is the war, not Iran versus America, not Russia versus Ukraine. That is the definitive WW3. that was driving gold. And I think that's been delayed and hopefully not just postponed, but cancelled. But that tension will remain there. That tension is not going away. China is now still on the ascendance, and America is on the decline. And this Iranian situation might, put a very fat underlining under it. I mean, apparently Trump's going to be making an announcement this evening. Who knows what that's going to be? Is it going to be boots on the ground, tough luck, guys, we're going to go because we have to? Or is it going to be, well, we've won and we're leaving now, and don't believe anybody that says otherwise? But it's not catastrophe. I don't want to exaggerate it too much. I mean, certainly catastrophe for a lot of people. But either way you look at it, if America pulls out in the next couple of days, that's going to be absolute mayhem and chaos in the Middle East forever. And if they stick around, it's going to be mayhem and chaos for into further notice. So there doesn't seem to be many ways out of this morass. And what does that do to the market? Well, we'll know within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And for better or for worse, well, it can't be much better. I mean, it really can't be much better, but it can be a lot worse. So, I step to one side and leave it to the brave young men to trade this market. I just want to invest in, normality. Normality is very good to me, and we're not there. We're not in it. And, we are in one of those times when, luck doesn't necessarily favor the brave, not in these situations. Old pilots and bold pilots, but no old, bold pilots. That's how I feel about this market at the moment.
Contrary to popular belief, in the apocalypse, most people aren't going to die by the hands of marauders. In fact, you're probably going to die from disease. This is why you need antibiotics. The problem is, getting them requires a prescription. Well, today's sponsor is Jace Medical. They've created a revolutionary service that allows you to get prescription medications like antibiotics with relative ease, hassle-free. This will be worth more than gold in an emergency for somebody who needs them. So do yourself a favor and take your prepping to the next level while you still can. Check out the link in the description below. And now, back to the video. Interesting. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. You basically went all over the map. So I just want to provide some
countervailing. That was a straight line.
I want to provide some countervailing force to those arguments, because you said a lot of things, especially with respect to China and the United States. Many view the Iran war as a proxy engagement with the Chinese, in the sense that the U.S. is attempting to damage Chinese interests in that region. And that might actually, by diverting forces from Indo-PACOM, which of course is the area of responsibility that oversees the Taiwan Strait and a potential conflict on that front, are being diverted and sent to Iran, which actually might entice the Chinese to make a move quicker, especially if Taiwan is put in a weakened state by having less energy at their disposal. And of course, if this is a play against China, an attempt to try to disrupt energy flows towards China, then this might actually compel China to want to act a lot quicker. In terms of the gold price, a lot of people are chalking that up to a liquidity crisis, and we're seeing now gold tick up once again. It seemed at one point it was, as the markets were tanking, gold was also tanking with it, which seemed kind of counterintuitive to people at the time, because everybody assumed that, well, when Mad Max hits, the price of gold is going to go through the roof. And I'm sure you have some things to say with respect to that. On the topic of liquidity. I'll just finish my little dissertation.
No, I was trying to agree with you.
Yeah. No, I figured you'd agree with that part, and I actually want to hear what you have to say about that. With respect to Russia and Ukraine, I mean, all bets are off on that still. It's still escalating very much, and despite the attempts to try to suppress the price of oil, the U.S. hasn't really said much about Ukraine's attacks on Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, which appear to be ongoing and which appear to be very impactful, taking up to 40% of their seaborne oil offline. And with respect to the Iranian capabilities in retaliation. I mean, if they were attacked in a unilateral war of aggression and they're going up against a adversary which is superior in terms of their technology and their capabilities, I mean, this really is the most technologically advanced military in the history of the universe our known universe, going up against little old Iran. They're left to asymmetry in order to try to level the playing field. So, I mean, to play the devil's advocate in terms of that, I don't particularly buy into the propaganda about why we attacked Iran and why we need to be there at all. I don't particularly buy into the propaganda about Russia, NATO, although I understand that both sides are guilty of many things. But what is your thoughts with respect to the gold price and these price movements that we're seeing that don't seem to be strictly correlated to other commodities or the markets, or inversely correlated with the markets as they typically have been prior to the conflict? What do you think is the driving factor here?
Well, one of the reasons I got out last Friday in the morning Europe time was all the correct correlations were gone. And there was only one correlation or only one explanation. And that is everybody pulling their money out and going to cash. And, people who buy gold are not necessarily your audience. Your audience buys gold. But over many years, it's only basically pushed that value of gold up nicely, actually, over 25 years, in a way you would expect. The previous moves of the last year or two, that's been pushed by lots of different people for different reasons. But those speculative elements, in addition to those strategic elements, they've run for cover. So the hot assets, like silver has been an incredibly hot asset, not because of people that are stacking silver and believe fiat's going away, but because of speculators and funds and all those sort of people who piled in a FOMO way. Well, that froth came off the top of the market and they went to cash, because for them, gold is just another asset to play, and they went to cash. So all those assets, military companies came down. You're looking at this.
As preppers, we call them traitors, not traders, because we buy physical, and so we view anybody trading in the precious metals market as a traitor.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
that's why I was disappointed when I heard you sold.
You have to be in power to call people traitors. But anyway, you see, for me, it's just another asset. And when I see assets on the move, or looks like they're about to move, I get in early and I get out a bit early sometimes. And I didn't buy gold because I think the world's coming to an end, or that the dollar's going to go away. I bought it because it was going up. And it was going up, as it turned out. It went up a lot, and it made me a 2.5x or whatever. And then I looked at it and went, that's it. It's all over now. You can just see that from, a couple of generations of being in the markets. I know we're top when I see one. So I got out of it. Now, obviously, I'm not Nostradamus. Well, I don't think I am at the moment. And I'm always due for a blunder. And maybe I got out at the bottom, and maybe I'm going to get in back at the top again, and whatever. But it's not the direction of the market. It's not return on capital. It's return of capital right now. That's important. And that's why everything disconnected. That's why all the military companies were down. Because everyone went, yes, I should be in Lockheed Martin, but, yes, there is a war, but I want to go to cash now. So everything came down. Now everything's gone up because that herd is piling back in again. Now they might be right, they might be wrong. Yeah, I think we'll find out this afternoon when Donald Trump says we won goodbye, or when he says we're going in with boots. It will be a different market again over, in an instance. This is economics driven by Twitter or Truth Social in this case. So, I don't want to be investing on the basis of what comes out on Truth Social in a few hours. And therefore, I'm going to let the smoke clear. Now, a lot of your audience will say, well, I don't care. I've got gold. it was a lot cheaper about a year ago, and it's still pretty high. And in gold I trust, and I'll be holding it and holding it and holding it, and I don't care. And I think that, in a way, I'm doing that. I'm saying I like my fiat for a few weeks, a few months. I don't really care whether it goes up or down. I don't. I'm now a medium-term holder of cash. But as soon as the dust settles, or I know the direction of the market, I'll be back in it again, because you just have to know the direction. That's all you need to do in the markets. Which way is the market going? That's all you need to know. And at the moment, I don't know which direction it's going, and nor does the market, because 1 minute it's like that, next minute it's like that. So the market doesn't know either. So I just don't want to get caught in the stampede, either for the entrance or for the exit. So I can sit there and I can, get 4% if I put it in dollars, or a couple of percent if it's euros, and thank you very much, and wait. And I think that I still think we're in a bear. So I still think it's going to be nasty. But, maybe a miracle has occurred. I'll be saying, what went right? Well, I don't know.
It does appear that it's being inversely correlated, at least not today, but for the last month of March, it was inversely correlated with oil. And when I go back and I look at 2008, when oil went sky high, we did see kind of a crash in gold at that period of time throughout that recessionary window in 2008, 2009. But then gold 3x'd after that. So it went up to about, the beginning, late 2007. And then when the recession hit, oil went sky high, gold crashed. And then as soon as that was kind of sorted out and oil found its top and oil started selling off, that's when gold started shooting up again, all the way up till 2012. Now it erased probably, half of those gains ultimately in the 20-teens. But it still was up significantly higher. So I wonder if we're going to see the same pattern again. If oil keeps going up, I would expect to see gold and silver go down correspondingly, which isn't actually, in my mind, bearish in the long term. It's actually bullish, because that means once things get sorted out, if this isn't the beginning of the apocalypse, then I would expect to see gold and silver go to the moon again.
Well, if you look at the chart, because the charts are fantastic for predicting the past, you'll see what happened. It was going up like a rocket. It came down like a rock. And I think I was on the show when it was doing that. And I said, what it should do is the volatility should shrink and it should go on trend. And it did exactly that. So I thought, okay, that's great. It's all going to plan. It's all going to plan. And then this US-Iran situation came up and it just broke. So whatever was driving it, something drove that spike, FOMO, you could say. Everybody piled in, and that move ended and it came down, and then it was starting to get back on that trend, which is great. That's just going to carry on that trend. It's going to go to 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. Not necessarily great for global peace, but nonetheless, that is the trend it's on again. And then this came out and it all broke. And the past trends, which have been running for a very long time, have broken. Now, if we go back to normality, the markets would adapt and go back on trend, because the long-term strategic economic trend, that's what it's been on. And you can go look at the S&P or the Dow or the NASDAQ, and you will see that trend. You can just get a Crayola and just go like that. Well, it's off that trend now. And that says the market the market thinks bad things, actually. But you could say that when this is all sorted out, it'll all go back to normal. And for gold, normality is that trend that it's been on for a couple of years and was very tight and very, very, the market knew where it was going. Then we had that FOMO moment, and then it went back on that trend in a way that it does, which it doesn't really know, but actually that's the way it's going. That's the direction of travel. And it would tighten up. The volatility would shrink and you'd get a nice thin line along that trend. Well, that's all gone, and it's gone for the NASDAQ, and it's gone for the S&P, and it's gone for the Dow, which is really what made me decide in the end. I just looked at the American markets and went, these are going somewhere else. That this is not yesterday's market. We're in tomorrow's market, and the market is going down. Well, everything might go fine, and it will reconnect and it will go on its way. But the market is saying it's going down. And, you trade what you see. We'll see. I mean, I only saw this afternoon that Trump is going to be making a statement to American people. Now, of course, it's April the 1st, which means that you can't believe anything you hear, and everything I've said.
Well, no, I actually think that if it's April 1st, he might actually tell the truth for once.
Exactly. Exactly. That is the situation. And that really, in a small piece of humor, sums up the situation that we're dealing with and that an investor is facing, and is a very good reason to hold gold and silver in a balanced portfolio of risk. Now, I'm not somebody that needs to have a balanced portfolio of risk. I hope. And therefore, my unbalanced portfolio is an unbalanced portfolio of cash. Which, if you're going to have an unbalanced portfolio, that's the one to have.
So has Trump, it sounds like Trump kind of won then, because in terms of making you capitulate, because he's basically created so much ambiguity that it's caused you to pull out of the markets.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, he's not won. I mean, unless he's trying to destroy humanity, that's not winning. And he don't care about me. He don't care about anybody, does he? He is almost archetypal. He don't care about anybody, about anything, any rules. It's all about him.
Well, you said today that his goal was to contradict himself, and he's playing, I think, not 4D chess, but 12-dimensional chess.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And
12 dimensions of BS, maybe.
It's a classic strategy from the Middle Ages in terms of statecraft, which is to appear completely bonkers and be totally unpredictable. In game theory, if you are actually facing an overwhelming enemy, the only way you can fight them is by doing this. But he is the overwhelming enemy. But the whole of modern statecraft these days is to be strong, sensible, and go in a clear, obvious direction for everybody. So they go, okay, well, we won't get in the way of that, and that seems sensible. We can just tuck in behind and slipstream with a superpower, and everything will be great. Yeah. So this return to some of the ancient art of war strategies is not a good development, but we'll see. I like many of your viewers who have insulated themselves from exactly this situation. It's kind of validation, and pity the people that aren't prepared. I mean, for me, the biggest, I look at oil and I go, oh, oil, $100 a barrel. What are you talking about? It was 120 only a couple of 3 years ago, and it was 140 within the last decade. So, don't worry about inflation. But I tell you, those fertilizers that aren't coming around. Mm-hmm. You can't fertilize crops after you should fertilize them, and that ain't coming around the hormone. So, I mean, the soft commodities, food is gonna be an issue this year for people. So that is a worthy of pointing out. So whereas oil may be $200 a barrel, $300 a barrel, I would be saying, oh, that's not going to be good, but it's not. It's 100, and it's been 100 a couple of times in the last 10 years, and nobody was renting their clothes and weeping that much at that point. But I tell you, if the fertilizer doesn't really get around and there isn't enough stockpiles around the place, then that could be, very, very, very bad for lots of people.
Are the stakes higher though now? Because it seems as though, like you said, that we've seen $147 oil, in fact, and that was back in 2008 when controlled for inflation, we're looking over $200. So it seems like right now there's this panic because, of course, we do have a debt that is growing. The debt to GDP is much higher. I think people are personally more in debt than ever before. So is there a risk that, inflation is more of a problem now, and that's why they're panicking? And this is why Trump is doing whatever he can to try to game the markets and keep people guessing and keep the things suppressed.
Well, if you've got debt, as long as it's low interest rate debt, you want inflation. So inflation is only bad for people that save and save in fear. And as I said that to somebody a few weeks ago, for many people, they welcome inflation. Inflation is good for them. If you took 20 people and you said, how many of you have got a decent pile of cash? Not many of them are going to put their hand up. They're going to say, oh, I've got a big mortgage. Oh, yeah, no, a little bit of cash. I've got enough cash for the next 6 months. They haven't got piles, mountains of cash. And you say, oh, how about your debts? Oh, I've got a big mortgage. Oh, inflation. Well, I like that. I like paying 5% on my mortgage and having a 10% inflation rate. I mean, that makes me, well, rich in property assets, which is the biggest asset for most people, if they've got that at all. And, for the people that are employed and have no money and have no debt, well, it just shows up in their pay packet. But nonetheless, this is an inflationary environment we're in, and we're going to be in an inflation environment, even if we weren't in this environment. The fallback environment, the normal environment is now going to be inflationary. Just the major issue is that there is this runaway governance in America. And that has, extreme potential. And, that extreme potential, who knows how it's going to pan out? It's the unknown. If you don't know how long you're going to live, the value of assets is big. If you know you're going to live to 90, the value of assets is that big. Yeah, longevity is a very, very good booster of asset prices, because the longer you're going to live, the more assets become worth. Yeah, and so uncertainty diminishes the value of most assets. If you're not certain of yourself, what's the value of your house? Yeah, what's the value of your house in Ukraine? Yeah, even if it's far, far away from trouble, it's less in many places than it was before. Yeah, so uncertainty, actually, that's probably a bad example. Probably property where people can hide is probably gone up. But, you get the idea. Uncertainty lowers the value of most assets. And, that is the issue. We've got this increase in randomness. And the more random the market is in terms of what's going on below it, the lower value of assets. So the potential for a very, very, very bad crash is there. They do have tools to stop it, like they stopped it with the tariff tantrum, when somebody pulled a lever and pumped a load of money into the bank, so they bought the assets that were falling down. And they could do it again. It's a possibility that there will be you want to buy the market now, says the president, and up it goes. But there's only so many times you can do that. There's only so much road that you can go down, which, again, your viewers will agree, I hope, with that. You can't keep getting away with it. You can pull lots of rabbits out of the hat, but at some point you run out of rabbits. And, this could be it, because America making a mess and basically turning and stomping off it will set back the situation in the Middle East for who knows how long, and will certainly define America as a fallen angel.
You've talked in the past about investing in the ancillary inputs into various crises. So like you talked about last time with gold and silver, well, everybody's looking at miners. You're looking at excavation companies that will be needed to actually dig the stuff out of the ground. Is there anything that you're looking at right now that pertains to the food situation and the fertilizer crisis? Is that a market that you're looking at, or is it something that you would avoid because of, I don't really know how these things work in terms of, if there's a food shortage, does that mean that food stocks go up or do they go down? Like, what happens in those conditions?
Well, I'm not a soft commodities guy, but certainly, and Canada has potash companies, fertilizer companies, people that generate fertilizer outside of the Middle East dynamic. Well, they're certainly going to get higher prices. So that's going to be good for them. Whether you want to trade a short-term situation or not is another matter. And, a lot of people have been talking about fertilizer companies who are outside of the Middle East dynamic. Now, if you're a fertilizer company that relies on an oil flow, then obviously that's, your price of your inputs goes up and your profit stays the same. So there's that to bear in mind. So if you were looking into that, you'd want to find yourself a fertilizer company that has a, for example, potash mine and where the only input that's going to go up is the old diesel going into your trucks carrying it out of the hill. So, one has to do one's research. And for me, I'm not researching. I loved everything I sold. I just don't want to be in a situation of riding it into the pit of despair and having to hold on to it for 3 years to see it go back to where I sold it at. Mm-hmm. And, I over the years, I have done extremely well getting out at the top and getting back in at the bottom. And I've only got out at the top and it didn't go down far enough for it to make any difference once, which was 2022, which was a pretty nasty bear market for a year. And it didn't crash. It went slowly down, and it never gave a clear signal of a comeback. And when it started to come back, I was slow back in. So I got back in where I got out, which was very boring. And this could be that, but I don't see how President Houdini gets out of this one. I don't see. And I do not underestimate Donald Trump. Anybody that could get where he is today after the hell he went through, and after the constant attacks against him over all these years, he is without doubt an incredible person, and he will have to pull a amazing stunt for this not to be a big setback and not to be very poor for the global economy and, for that matter, markets. And so we will see. I prefer to see what rabbit he attempts to pull out of the hat in the near term, and then I'll make my decision whether I've got out too early or not early enough.
Well, I wonder what we can make of the Australian Prime Minister and the British Prime Minister wanting to do their public statements, which were, at least the Australian one I watched in full, and it was very brief. It was like 2 minutes or something. And I wonder if there's a reason why they wanted to address their population before he did. And both of them basically said that the next few months are going to be pretty rough. What do you make of that?
I haven't been following it. I've been having a migraine all afternoon. We are. If
it was just last night and this morning, basically at 2 a.m. our time, 7 p.m. I guess on April 1st, the Australian Prime Minister made a statement, and just today, Keir Starmer made a statement.
Well, at the end of the day, the reason to go up against Iran is that those guys would love to have a bomb, and they'd love to use it. I mean,
do you really think why would they, get to this point in their civilization just to start a nuclear war, which would end in their complete destruction?
They haven't got to that point in their civilization. They're still living at the point in civilization where people used to be slaughtered, and they used to say, "Let God sort it out."
Well, that's exactly, but they've been under sanctions for many years, and despite that, they've made some pretty impressive technological progress. So I guess what I'm asking, there's an argument that as soon as Iran gets a bomb, they're going to start, lobbing them at Israel, which would immediately result in their complete and utter destruction. I don't
think they do that. No, they just have it and then just menace everybody. And because remember that if you
couldn't we make the argument that the U.S. and Israel are doing that?
Sure, of course they are. Absolutely.
So it's not a matter of...
That's what those things are for.
It's might makes right, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but and that is the trouble, you see, because before this, at the very least, lip serve was paid to the international rule of law. And then when you just say, no, we don't care about that anymore, off we go. Yeah. I mean, that was the curse of Cheney, which was, give war a chance. Yeah, that's what he said. And look what that brought about. And might is right, is catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic in a world where you want peace. And if once you throw that out of the window, things degenerate. And that's the problem that we are facing. But without doubt, they would have got a nuclear weapon. Pakistan has a nuclear weapon. In fact, it's quite surprising that somebody didn't manage to buy one off Pakistan and just ship it over the border. But, if anybody out there is going to use a nuclear weapon for a random reason, it's going to be Iran. Look, if you look at Yemen, you can take out a red marker and just write Iran on it, right? And if you go to Israel and look at Gaza, you can write Iran on that. And if you go to southern Lebanon, you can write Iran on that. you might as well say that they belong to Iran. Yeah. All that's been going on in those places is because Iran makes that happen. Yeah. Yemen don't get all that stuff. What do you think they're making drones? No, they get it from Iran, and Iran says, fly them that way. Yeah. Do that. Or actually, you are Iran.
Well, I just find it interesting that, you have the Israelis who have undisclosed nuclear weapons. They're not signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have Jericho ICBM missiles. 400 is the estimate, and they're the ones who are engaged in this slaughter in Gaza and conducting these raids into the West Bank. And the United States is the only one who's ever used a nuclear weapon, yet everybody seems to insist that the Iranians, once they get a nuke, if they even pursue nuclear weapons, which I think at this point they'd be stupid not to, that they're going to just use it haphazardly, when what they've demonstrated thus far has surprisingly been a very measured retaliation and a very horizontal retaliation. Like, they're not responding disproportionately. They are doing the only thing they can do, which is lob missiles at the Gulf states and parts of Israel's critical infrastructure in order to try to force deterrence.
They've been fighting a war. Yemen is their war. Gaza is their war. Hezbollah is their war. That's them. It's not anybody else. It's them. Yeah.
Well, Gaza is a little complicated because it's Sunni Muslims and they get some funding from Qatar, but
where do you think they get all their weapons from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's from a variety of places. I don't know the specific.
It's not from a variety of places. It's all from Iran.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're Sunni Muslims, and they do have a lot of funding that comes out of Gulf countries as well. So it's kind of a weird, it's not like a one. Gaza is kind of unique. Maybe Hezbollah more so. I would agree with you that they get the majority of their.
As well in Yemen. You can just strip. You could go to the map and just cut out those areas and just put Iran on those. It's them. It's that is colonies they control.
Well, couldn't the argument be made that the Gulf states are monarch puppet governments of U.S. and Israeli hegemony?
Well, no, they're trying to build a civilization. They're all trying to do a Dubai. They're all trying to build the future of crystal cities with high tech. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to have a civilization. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do really hard. Even, I won't say even, and Saudi too. They want to build these cities of the future, which are not hardened. Yeah. And yes, obviously there's going to be, argy-bargy, and there is. But, nothing like the absolute chaos that Iran foments. Absolute chaos and mayhem. Yeah. And, how many of their own children did they slaughter only a few months ago when they got fed up with the bad government they got there? Was it a couple of thousand slaughtered?
Well, I think there was rumors that there was an armed insurrection. And I think even the Israelis and the Americans said that we were funding this armed insurrection against the government. So I would presume in that case, you would want to suppress attempts to subvert the government.
They've got a pretty strong record of slaughtering people.
I mean, so does the U.S. and Israel, though, right?
Sure. And that's the tragedy of all of this.
It's like we can't make moral arguments about this issue. All we can really say is, well, Iran is trying to exert its influence in the region, and so are the Israelis, who kind of injected themselves into the mix several decades ago, and they're both vying for power in the region, and they're doing so in whatever sort of ways.
That is the tragedy of, we as individual people and citizens and families get caught up in this flexing of people that have nobody else's interest than their own. Yeah. And it's the tragedy of government that they tend to have a habit of going down these paths and forgetting the catastrophic outcomes of these things that happened only a generation or two ago. And that is complete tragedy. But nonetheless, give them half a chance and these governments go off and do it. And I mean, take the smallest country you can possibly find. It will have a secret service. Yeah. I'm sure even Iceland, with 300,000 people, have got secret service and spies and a military. Yeah. It's just the tragedy of centralized government that they get into these loops that lead us all down the wrong road. And I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this that will agree that's why they are preppers, because they don't trust a happy outcome from centralized government in these affairs, and they're preparing for an outcome which is just a outcome of a series of very avoidable errors of what happens when power is centralized. And that's what you have. And you don't have to go back far to read about these things. And it's just people in power just playing silly games with other people's lives. And it's a tragedy. It is absolute tragedy. And here we are, and we will find out very shortly what will be the next chapter of this particular book. And we are, unfortunately, and have been now for some time, on this road of ever increasing global stress. And it's all unnecessary and potentially catastrophic. And, the markets are behaving accordingly. But at some stage, all those correlations that you rely on in markets, they all break. You want a letter home? Here you go. Here's the letter. Take my gold watch. Post a letter. They'll be swapping gold for cigarettes or whatever it was back then, a bar of soap. So at some point, all those correlations break. And, hopefully we're a long way away from that. And I believe we are. But nonetheless, there is a tendency to go down this road. And we are on it. And we've been on it for a couple of years now. And, all this, well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I hope that it all settles down, because all these rogue states that get up to, that basically go round trolling, and if they can, and trying to get away with whatever they can get away with. Oh, well, I like that piece of land, I'll have that. Oh, I like that country, I'll invade that. Then that is why you have these global conflicts, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight to this.
The first mistake that probably 50% of people make when they get into prepping is they run out and they find the cheapest, biggest bucket of so-called emergency food that money can buy. The problem is it usually tastes awful. And I know what you're thinking, Nate, in a disaster situation, I'm gonna rise to the occasion. My palate is formidable. No, it's not. You're not built like that. You're a first worlder just like me. There's a much better solution that your family's gonna love you for. Let's check it out. Would you like some chocolate cake that will last 25 years? How about some vegetables, or some shredded beef, or hundreds of other varieties? Go through the link in the description below and get 15% off the #1 freeze-dried food company in America, the only one that I 100% resolutely endorse, Wholesale Freeze-Dried Foods. Use the coupon code in the description for 15% off. Yeah, I agree with most of that. I mean, from a strictly objectivist point of view, I try to view these things not in terms of, when I say might versus right, from an economic standpoint, I want to know what is the situation stripped of all the propaganda from both sides, because both sides leverage information to exert their control, and an autocracy, whether it's left-driven or right-driven, is just as bad, arguably. So when I look at these things, I don't look at, is the U.S. in the right? Is the Israelis in the right? I mean, clearly, there's a lot of arguments to be had there. But the reason why I like having economists on is they tend to view these things in really empirical terms, where they're not kind of attached to the outcome in one way or another, in the sense that they don't succumb to the propaganda that's being leveraged by one side or the other to achieve their goals. And so that's one of the reasons why I like bringing people like you and Doomberg and other guests that we have on who, have a more objective take on these things.
I think that economically it's not good, because if you start sending your assets towards, unproductive application, you lower your productivity and efficiency, and everybody gets poorer. And that was the trouble with COVID. Everybody got a lot poorer because of COVID, because of all those lockdowns. And if you make mistakes and you lose money, you're poorer. And if you make good calls and you make wins, you get richer. And if you look at what China actually is doing, not what people are thinking they might do, and it's just, sitting pat and just saying, now, boys and girls, everybody be sensible. Why can't you just be sensible? Look, here's some nice plastic things we just made. Why don't you just give us some of your money? And why don't we just crack on with, being prosperous? Then that is the sensible way to go. And ultimately, the best governance is what is the superpower. And, governance is up in the air because, the new media, the new way that people find out what's going on and interact, it is basically turning the whole old way of doing business upside down. And, that volatility is what we're seeing now because we are in a new epoch. And that new epoch has the volatility of a new epoch in the same way as the 1700s had with the Industrial Revolution. And that makes for dangerous times, bottom line, right? So the economic impact of war is poor, but there's a lot of massive economic things developing which could more than counteract that. But ultimately, this instability is structural and it's going to take a long time to wash out. And we're going to have moments like this when, everybody's, biting their nails. But going back to your propaganda point, the propaganda is absolutely putrid. Absolutely putrid. It's hard to know if there's any truth out there because of the way that it's going. There are countries that have thousands of people whose sole job is to go on and give you lies and tell you lies. And it's quite difficult to find out which country it is. But if you start tracing it back, you'll get back to those countries pretty quick. And for example,
it's very difficult to make investment in accurate investments in that environment, which is why it's so important to try to see through not only the propaganda of the other side, but our side as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the vast, Iran's been incredibly active at poisoning the world with negative propaganda. And, I think if anything, the Western propaganda is completely weak as opposed to what's coming out of China and Russia and Iran. But, the Europe, and particularly Europe and even America, has absolutely lost its a distant second to what's coming out of these other people. There isn't a warehouse of 1,000 people in America who sat there spewing lies out. It's just not a thing. But there is in China, and it is in Russia, and it is in Iran. So, there's all this new asymmetry out there, which has changed the rules. And
I guess it comes down to also who controls the algorithms, right?
Well, that's a different tool altogether. That's another weapon. But that's a weapon that gets turned.
The medium is the message? Isn't that what Marshall McLuhan said?
Yeah, I think that's a slight quotation. But the trouble is with algos, your enemies don't wield them up against you. Your own people wield the algos against you.
Exactly.
It's your own side that beats you up with algos, not the other guys, because you have to use their platforms to get chewed up by algos, and the platforms are certainly owned by the West, and they certainly process you pretty badly. And there's yet another variable which is putrid.
You said that you're still holding on to your platinum and palladium, getting back down to earth here.
Oh, gone. I've got rid of all of it. Got rid of all of it.
Oh, you got rid of platinum and palladium as well?
Oh, yeah. You got rid of absolutely everything because...
Okay, because you were holding it up to like a few weeks ago, right?
Up to Friday.
Yeah.
Up to Friday. I mean, you would go, how much? The size of my portfolio, I spent pretty much most of the morning, one at a time, unloading all my assets.
I mean, that sounds like panic, man. That sounds like you're getting ready to bug out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look, I use this analogy. You're up the top of a mountain. You're going to go down to the bottom of the mountain and have a nice, schnapps at the bottom of it. But at the moment, you're on a precipice and you've got to make a jump. Yeah. So you sit on the top and you shuffle about a bit and then you commit. Mm-hmm. And, that's what I did on Friday. It was like, it was literally Trump saying, oh, no, not 5 days, 10 days now. And I thought that's
this
what
is did just it for you, hey? So he is.
Yeah. Ridiculous. I don't want to be, I don't want to give my wealth to Donald Trump to play with.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting if everybody did something like that, what the consequence would be. But you said previously that you thought platinum and gold would reach
I
parity
love it.
once again.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it. But it doesn't mean it won't go down a lot in a 2 or 3 week period.
Yeah.
And then I would re-enter. If you look at the market, it's doing its thing, and then it's suddenly going, and that it doesn't have to be the beginning of the roller coaster drop, but it often is. And my position is, I don't want to be wrong about that. I don't care if it goes back to where it was, 10%. I don't care about missing that. But if it is so bonkers that could be and the American market in particular is so high, the upside is low and the downside is major. And that was Friday. Now, we're going to see a rabbit come out of a hat, and everyone's going to say, yay, it's all fine. The mullahs are going to say, oh, we love America. Yes, life to America. Have as much oil as you like. No, nuclear weapons. No, we don't want to do that.
What would be your signal to re-enter?
A lowering of volatility. Now,
so like just the VIX going down to like 15 or something?
No, it's not a matter of price. It's a matter of stability. So
no, but I mean the VIX, like the volatility index. If that went down to
that's an option thing, and that doesn't track what I track. It's similar, but it's not what I track. So what I would be looking at would be the range of the indices intraday. So the size of the candle, if you look at candles on the charts, if you look at the market, say 6 months ago, look at those candles, that is normality. You look at the candles over the last 2-3 weeks, that is not normality. And when those candles start to shrink back to normality, that means the market is getting its poise back. The bigger the bars, the less the market knows what the devil's going on.
So when we cease to see anything over like a 2% spread in equities markets or something, that's when you're more comfortable. Like intraday, you'd be comfortable jumping back in.
Yeah. If you want to visual it like that, I would just do it by eye. You go, well, it was the bars were that wide before, they were that wide, and then bang, and now it's coming back down. It's coming back down, and it's still a little bit too fruity. And now, it's only twice as volatile as it was before all this kicked off. That's interesting. And which direction is it going? Yay, the certainty's back, but it's going down. I wouldn't get in. But the certainty's back, it's going sideways. I'll be going, maybe I should buy a little bit of this. And that was my favorite. I love that one. I have a little bit of that one back. And then if it goes up, I say, maybe I should need to accelerate, because I dive out, but I don't dive back in again. I'll be what some people are now using DCA as the word, but it isn't. I would be moving slowly, and I'll be going over everything I had, and I'll be looking at it and go, I love that one. That goes first. Why did I have that one? I don't want that one again. And I would be moving back in. So it's a bit like housekeeping, actually. It can be quite good for reassessing all your investments, because you can get a little bit, inertial with what you've got and go, I can't remember why I bought it, but I'm not sure I want to sell it. Whereas when you've sold it all and you go, should I get back into that one? No. This one's even better, and it's just popped up. So there is a refreshing of a portfolio, and that portfolio haven't touched it apart from gold and silver for over a year from when the tariff tantrum hit, and then basically it will probably be still quite a lot of what I would have had 2 years before that. And it was a fabulous portfolio, absolutely fabulous portfolio. It just made me so much money even up to now. That's why another reason I got out was, it has been so good that you start to worry about it being too good.
What about copper? You talked about how you're very bullish on that.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
So you think that one's going to go higher then?
Yeah, well, definitely over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And that's another reason I got out, because all the copper mines were coming down like a ton of bricks. And it's like, what? That's ridiculous. And all the military companies coming down. What? And even though my portfolio didn't come down anywhere near as much as all the other stuff, and is not going back up, if I'd held it, anywhere near as much as all the other stuff, because it's a hedge against this kind of craziness, really. Nonetheless, it shouldn't have been doing that for sensible economic reasons, which means it's doing that for not sensible economic reasons. And the market being never wrong, it's telling you, ooh, that's, ooh, dear, oh dear, this is bad. And that's what the market's been saying. And there's me having a migraine this afternoon, not hearing that Starmer's come out and wants to speak to the people, and the Australians didn't want to speak to the people. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, I mean, I don't know what it's been done while we've been talking. It should be going south, but it probably hasn't gone south. It's probably who knows. And that is, at some point, the uncertainty and the unknowability of the market means that you have to reassess your positioning. Now, if you're in precious metals and you think you've always feared the worst and you think this is part of it, then you've got your positioning, and that's good. That's solid. That's absolutely solid. I don't hold that thesis. My thesis is that this will go back to normality in 2 or 3 months. And over that period, I will probably be re-entering.
Do you think this is going to be resolved in a few months?
I hope so. I hope it's in a strategy. But
I'm trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to get an unequivocal prediction from you.
I will give you an unequivocal prediction. It's going to go up, down, or sideways, but it's not going to go right to left. And I will read the market. The market will tell me.
Come on, man. Be bold. What is the floor to get back in on gold and silver?
Okay, I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm going to be mainly wrong. Okay, it's going to crash. It's going to crash, and then once it's crashed, and everybody weeps, and everybody says it's all over, it's the end of the world, I will re-enter. That's what I think is going to happen.
The Buffett strategy.
Yeah, why not? I'm a contrarian value investor. Now, the market doesn't listen to me. I will be listening to the market. And if that thesis is wrong, it will tell me, it will start behaving in a way which doesn't fit that. And then I will follow the market rather than, because it won't be following me. So my thesis is we're in a bear market. Those charts are bear market charts. And any market that goes up like a rocket when it's been floating down, that's a bear market. Bear markets do that. Yeah. Bull markets do this. Yeah. Well, it's in a bear market cycle right now. Only just started, might not be long, but it's floating down and it's spiking up. Well, that's bearish to me. Everyone will go, hey, it went up 800 points today, isn't it brilliant? And I go, no, that's what happens sketchy, in a bear.
Yeah. It's sketchy.
It spikes up.
Well, it's like, on a tightrope or something, but I kind of agree with you with respect to this. I think that if oil continues to rise, I think we'll see a crash in gold and silver, but I don't view it as a reason to get out per se, because I think after things get sorted, it's going to bounce back with a vengeance. But so, I'm long on it. And if you hold physical, it really doesn't matter, right? Because you bury it in your backyard or whatever, and that's the end of it.
Don't do that. We're in the backyard. When are you out?
Well, I don't have much. I got a couple gold coins, but nothing to.
You remember me on your show saying I was out around 100. Yeah. Now, if I re-entered, I would get back 40% more than I sold. So that is, and time direction's easy. Timing is very difficult. So if you can time it, and if I fancied silver, I could get back in, and I would, get my ton back and more. Yeah. Now with the market at 70, I don't want a ton of silver. At 50, I'd have 2 tons, and I like that. I would be going, oh yeah, silver $50. So it's just about the price. It's just another asset, and it's just about the price. So at 50, I'm engaged. 3,000 on gold, I'm engaged. Yeah. The market with Nvidia worth more than the whole London Stock Exchange, I'm not engaged. Yeah. And in this crazy time, I don't want to be in those assets. I want to be on the sidelines. I want to be like one of those bad allies. I'm on the hill with my army, waiting to see which one wins, and I'll join them.
I wanted to just ask you, you're in Monaco right now. Obviously, that's a very wealthy society. Are you guys seeing any of these fuel shortages or issues?
Oh, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So
It's
people are
only a
not
mile long.
struggling with their
You drive your
Bentleys,
Ferrari.
fueling up their Bentleys and their Ferraris.
You drive your Bentley a mile and you drive it back again. I think you can get many, many days of driving to the restaurant and back in Monaco on a fuel tank in your Bentley or even your Ferrari making all that racket. So yeah, it's not. It's a bubble. It's a haven, and it's a kind of it's for preppers. It's for very, very rich preppers.
Do you think there's a lot of preppers there? There's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of very rich people that worry about the future here, which is why they got money in the first place.
Fair enough. Well, I love having you on because, even though we disagree a lot on geopolitics, I find that it's especially important to bring in just a wide plethora of different opinions as it pertains to economics, so we can try to help our audience get a full picture of the world. And I never want to be an echo chamber. And so, that's why we have Clem Chambers
Yes.
on once in a while to try to counterbalance things a little bit. And I think you gave us all some stuff to think about. Is there any other final recommendations or words of advice to weather this period of turbulence?
It's about being more right than wrong. Okay. And sometimes it's about being aggressive. Sometimes it's about being defensive. And to me, this is a time to be defensive. And, I think your audience is naturally defensive in as much as they make sure that they've got their back covered. And, like during COVID, they were probably feeling pretty good about that. And I tip my hat to them. And I was very much a prepper before everybody else when the COVID thing hit, because I got it so early. I was getting it when it was coming into Italy before everybody in Europe realized they needed toilet paper. And
you got the rough strain then. You actually got it early on, like you got
yeah.
COVID?
No, I actually nearly died from the actual disease, but I knew it was going to be a thing before most people because my spies were telling me about people getting locked down in Italy before everybody else in Europe realized that it was going to be hitting them. And I realized that once it went through the firewall of China, it was going to, crash the markets. And as soon as it hit Europe, because there was, three firewalls: Chinese firewall, European firewall, American firewall, and those firewalls were going to be breached, like any good zombie apocalypse. And that would have a knock-on effect in the market. So I was out of those markets during each one of those phases and back in at the bottom, which was, very profitable. And I had my toilet paper months before anybody else's. So, that is the prepper way, isn't it? And we are in another one of them moments now. And it's a different shape and there'll be a different outcome. But, it's good to be prepared. It's good to have backup. It's good to have some food right now because, if the fertilizer issue is worse than people are saying it could be, or as bad as some people are saying it could be, there could well, certainly price inflation for the rich countries, but, devil take the hindmost. And there's a lot of people on the borderline of starvation in the world. And, that they will be in a very bad way, I should think, if the fertilizer doesn't get out there enough.
Well, just be careful because if you guys ever get cut off there in Monaco, I don't know if I'd want to be around a bunch of climbers and go-getters and, wealthy, cutthroats, because that could be a dangerous situation in and of itself.
In a good way. I have my bodyguards. It's a very safe place.
What if your bodyguards turn on you?
There's one policeman for every 7 people here.
Okay. Well, that means that it's going to be a police state then.
The police are lovely here. When they know that you're a resident, they literally salute you.
Oh, and when times are good, I'm sure they're best guys in the world. But
they will be very, very happy to be policemen here. I can tell you. And it's Interpol. It ain't no normal police force.
Right. All right, man. Well, I would encourage people to go check out Clem Chambers' YouTube channel. And where else could they find information about what you do?
I do a Substack where I talk about all things financial because I try to dig into the really deep stuff because, most people that look at financial markets, they're basically beginners. they're on 101. And really, you need to skill up. It's a skill game, so you need to transition from starter to intermediate as fast as possible at the very least.
Excellent. Well, go check that out, guys. Thanks for coming out, Clem. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Nate.
You take care. We'll talk to you again.
Everybody the best. Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a thing. It's going to be a historic period, and it's good to tell your grandchildren about it.
Let's see what Trump says tonight. I'm going to get some popcorn.
Yeah, well, you might look at the market and see what the market says before he speaks. It might actually be already there.
It's not really. It's like a broken thermometer at this point. But all right, buddy, you take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.